Hey everybody, I told you it wouldn't be long until our next video came out. Happy Friday again. We're going to go ahead and give our top five power rankings going into week 6. We know that the week has already kicked off, but neither team that played last night is anywhere near the top five. So we don't have to worry about it. Justin, you ready to go ahead and give us your top five first?
top five top five worst games ever maybe for that game last night.
Oh, that game was horrible. I think the only game
But
worse than that was the Thursday night game
the
before.
previous week, I don't know. We might be in for another doozy this coming up Thursday with the Saints and the Cardinals.
Oh, man.
So
There should at least be some points scored in that game, though.
yeah, no, I
At least
agree.
by the
But I am.
Cardinals.
I'm ready to give my top five though.
All right, here we go. Let's get into some talking about some good football teams. All right, let's kick it off. Your top five, starting with number five.
Yeah, my number five team, I'm gonna go with the Dallas Cowboys. And I know a lot of people might raise an eyebrow on that one, especially since I'm a 49ers fan. But hear me out. All right, their lone loss is to Tampa Bay team. They made the playoffs last year, made a run. Tampa has a good defense. Um, Dak did get hurt in that game, nonetheless. That was their loss, right? So good quality opponent. Um, Now in their wins, they've actually quietly beat some good teams with their backup quarterback on the heels of some great defensive performances. I mean, you can't. I know a lot of people are, but I'm not going to go out and give Cooper Rush all the credit and say that he's the one winning them these games. He's doing his job. He's managing the offense, making sure they don't turn over the ball too much, not making dumb plays, and letting his defense win games. So the Cowboys have beaten both teams that appeared in the Super Bowl. Granted, those two teams aren't quite as good as they were last year to start this year. They beat the Rams, they beat the Bengals. So they've got some quality wins. And again, it's with their backup quarterback. Not only did they beat the Rams, I mean, the Rams didn't look good at all against them.
No.
Their defense played a really good game. And again, against Cincinnati, they played a really good game there. Cincinnati, did kind of come back and make it a game. It was a pretty tight game. And then they play a improved Giants team. I don't care what anyone says. I'm hopping on the Brian Dable bandwagon. I think he's doing really good things over there with the Giants. They've been banged up. I mean, at the wide receiver position, they're down like two or three wide
Yeah.
receivers. So the Cowboys have even beaten. I would say the Giants are another quality team that they've beaten. So all in all, I mean, they're doing well. They beat the Redskins. I wouldn't call them a quality opponent, but
The Commanders.
Commanders. There you go.
That's the
But
first time
nonetheless,
all season that
what's that?
anybody's. That's the first time all season anybody slipped up.
Yeah. Uh, Sherm almost slipped up yesterday. I'll
He
just
did.
point that out. He
Yeah, he
almost
did.
slipped up. But anyways, who's keeping track?
Nobody.
Um, uh, but yeah, so I'm gonna put the Cowboys there. They're gonna get Dak back either this week or next week for sure. I know he practiced, so I'm gonna take the Cowboys there. My number four team, I've got the 49ers. Their defense is on a run that I mean, it's hard to compare. Honestly, the one of the best defense I've seen for the 49ers for a really long time. And they've had some really good players on defense. So overall, we haven't allowed a team to score more than 20 points on the year. Um, Garoppolo's starting to settle in. I think the play calling, Shanahan got some plays now. He's got a good idea and got the playbook a little bit more catered to Garoppolo's skill set. You see, they were getting Kittle more involved early on in the game against Carolina. I mean, let's just be honest. They forced Carolina to make business decisions after that game. Um,
Yeah.
they were probably thinking about it going into the game, but after the game, they realized. But overall, I think 49ers offense is going to settle in just fine. This is a team, that's just a year removed away from the NFC Championship game in a really tight fought battle against the Rams. They were just a couple minutes away actually from being on the opposite side of that game and getting the W.
Dropped
Uh,
interception away.
Yeah, I think the 49ers offense is better this year than it was last year. Um, Ayuk, he's playing at a better level. They just got more continuity, and I was really excited to see Lance. But if I'm being frank with you, I do believe that, I mean, Garoppolo is going to give us a better chance to get all the way back there. They're going to run it back and hopefully take it to the next level. So my number 3 team, I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. Mahomes is doing terrific things over there in Kansas City. They're finding ways to win. He's finding ways to get guys involved. Travis Kelce, he's performing per usual, and their defense is giving up some points, but I mean, when you've got Patrick Mahomes and a genius at head coach like Andy Reid, you find ways to win. And when you're able to come back from a 17-0 deficit, um, I mean, it's hard to argue them being there at number 3. I think.
Yeah.
And again, you don't get a lot of analytics from me when I give these power rankings. It's more of their performance and what I see and some of the things they go through, the grit and grind. And Kansas City, just man, they got smacked in the face early on against the Raiders, and then boom, next thing you know, they're winning.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
So,
I think part of it, I could be wrong because obviously, that's the name of our podcast, but I think that number one, the Raiders play them a little tougher than most teams do. That's been proven since Patrick Mahomes took over. But I think
yeah,
that part of it was they looked ahead to this Sunday. They were thinking, I mean, Buffalo on their mind. They got they got a big game coming up. So I think
they
that had
really
something to
do.
do with it as well. So but hey, like you said, they turned it around and came out with the W.
That's right. They came out with the W against a division opponent as well. So I think that's important to know too, because the division games, like you said, a rival, they always played against each other really tough. So my number 2 team, I'm dropping down from my previous rankings from number 1 to number 2 with the Eagles. Still again, phenomenal defense, great defense. They had a sloppy game in the rain against the Jaguars, who are an improved team, but I just feel like you got to come a little bit more prepared against a team like the Jags, as being as good of a team as you are, and the conditions were quite odd, so I'll give them that. But truth is, no fault of their own that I'm actually moving them down. They found a way to come back from 14 points down. So just like Chiefs,
Yeah.
they found a way. They could have easily packed it in where the weather was just awful. Uh, so, but I actually moved them down because the Bills are just freaking crazy good, and I have them as my number 1 team. The Josh Allen to Diggs combo is as good as ever. But how crazy is it that he's got 2, even 3 other receivers
Yeah.
at this point, other than Diggs, that can make impact plays and make big plays? I mean, Gabriel Davis, touchdown of 98
True.
yards, touchdown of 62 yards. And then he had another catch too that was quite long. So just a big game by him. Guys like Isaiah McKenzie, another receiver that's capable of catching a lot of passes from Josh Allen. And then that rookie, Shakir, I don't remember his first name if I'm being honest with you, but I remember the last name, Shakir. He played this week really well, scored a touchdown with McKenzie out of the game. I mean, how do you stop them?
Yeah.
How do you stop them? And they got a good defense. I
Yeah.
mean, they
Well,
got a good defense that's banged up. Their defense is banged up, and they're still an elite defense. They have rookies playing the corner position, and they're still an elite defense. So, I
yeah.
mean, how do you argue with them at number 1? I mean,
Yeah.
you don't. I don't
I
think you
hear.
do. So there's some big matchups though in my top 5 this week.
Yes.
I mean, you got the Eagles and the Cowboys this week, and you got the Chiefs and the Bills.
Yep.
So we're gonna find out a lot about these top 5 that I got. And then 49ers are in what I could consider a trap game, what people could consider a trap game against Atlanta. There's a lot of history there with Shanahan, and I mean,
Yep.
who knows? The NFL is
Okay.
writing its own stories this year. There's a
Yeah.
lot of parity in the NFL this year.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I'm gonna give you my top five, and then we'll
All right, let's
debate.
hear it.
They're pretty close. They're pretty close. I think you'll be surprised a little bit, but we'll see. Uh, but I think you have a solid top five there. I do agree that the 49ers could be in a potentially could be a trap game. I think it's more so because they got the Chiefs coming up after this. So, like I was talking about with the Chiefs last week, that it's hopefully not. I hope Shanahan is a good enough coach to not allow it to happen. Um, they do their typical thing that they do on their East Coast trips. They stayed on the East Coast, which is good, kept them focused, not a lot of travel, which is more obviously more wear and tear on their body if they obviously traveling more uncomfortable for them flying on them planes. I don't care how nice they are. It's not as nice as just hanging out and relaxing.
Right.
Um, so, so I think that's it. It's potentially a trap game, but we'll see. I will say this. I agree with you 100%. The 49ers defense is playing lights out. They're ranked number one in total defense right now. Not only have they not allowed anybody to score 20 points, they haven't allowed anybody to score more than 15 points on them so far this season. And that was last week against Carolina, and that was basically a garbage touchdown at the end when the game was we already knew who was going to win. So, all right, let me jump into my top five, and then we'll debate here. Again, I think you're going to be a little surprised, but I have some reasoning behind what I have here. So, again, our top five power rankings going into week 6. At number 5, I have the Minnesota Vikings at 4-1 and in first place in the NFC North. I know this one probably surprises you a little bit.
Yeah.
I anticipate this changing pretty soon, but I'm going based off of what I've seen the first 5 weeks. So obviously, as you mentioned, they got Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook's rounding back into form. They have a very dangerous offense. Their defense is making just enough plays to keep them in games and allow them to win games, which is why they're 4-1. And I think if Kirk Cousins can avoid messing it up, I do think that they have the inside track to win the NFC North, and they could potentially win a playoff game or two. Now that's a big if because we all know Kirk Cousins' history, especially when it comes to primetime games, which is what happens when they start flexing games towards the end of the season if you're in that playoff hunt. So we'll see if this holds up. I anticipate it probably won't, and then I'll be moving up a different team. But right now I have the Minnesota Vikings at number 5. All right, at number 4, I think what's going to surprise you more than anything is who's not on this list. At number 4, I have the Dallas Cowboys. I agree with everything you said about why you had them at number 5. I think they have one of the best, if not the best defense in the league. Personally, I think it's the 49ers defense, but they have one of the best defenses in the league. They have the best, in my opinion, right now, the best defensive player, individual defensive player in the league in Micah Parsons because he's so versatile. Um, as you talked about, they won 4 straight with their backup quarterback. And they seem to have cleaned up their penalty issue that was obviously their Achilles heel last year, and it looked like it was going to be their Achilles heel again the way they played in the preseason this year. But they seem to have cleaned that up, so that has played a big part in them being able to win a lot of these games too. So if Dak Prescott does make them better than they are right now when he comes back, then I think for the first time in many, many years, the Dallas Cowboys are a legitimate Super Bowl contender and not just noise that Jerry Jones is promoting. We'll see, though. Like you mentioned, they have a big game coming up this Sunday, Sunday night in Philly, and I am definitely looking forward to it. So at number 3, I have the Kansas City Chiefs. As I was doing this and I was thinking about, their last game, like you talked about, they were down 17-0, came back, won the game, even though the Raiders had a chance to tie the game and take it to overtime and possibly win. I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about the AFC West, and really after all the hoopla in the offseason about how good the AFC West was supposed to be, um, we're right back where we were the Chiefs are the cream of the crop in the AFC West. They're one of the best teams in the league. They got the best quarterback, the best coach, and obviously this Sunday is going to shape these rankings a little more. But right now I have the Chiefs at number 3, but I'm predicting that they move up by the end of Sunday. What'd you say?
I said, ooh.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Number 2. So I did the opposite. You moved Philly down and Buffalo up, and I moved Buffalo down and Philly up. And I didn't move Buffalo down for anything that Buffalo did or didn't do. I just moved Philly up because right now they're the last undefeated team. They're playing really well. They're playing really clean. They did the same thing that Kansas City did last week. They started off with a clunker and
Yep.
and obviously were able to rebound and end up winning the game. They basically dominated the game after they were down 14-0. So even though I was at number 2, I'm just going to show both of them here. So I got Buffalo at number 2. Again, they got one of the best defenses in the league. They're allowing just as many points as the 49ers, 12.2 points per game on defense. If a defense can sustain that for an entire year, it makes the offense's life really easy. And then if you have Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, and the guys that they have, Dawson Knox, when he gets in the mix, it makes it even easier for your offense. So I have Buffalo at number 2. They could easily be number 1 by the end of the week, but I'm going on a limb and picking KC, so I don't think they're going to be at number 1 next week. And then I have Philly at number 1, obviously, like I mentioned, undefeated, last undefeated team. They're going to face their toughest test of the season this week against the Cowboys defense. I think their defense is going to be just good enough to beat Dallas, even though Dallas's defense is so good. I think Philly's defense is going to be the difference in this game. As weird as that may sound, Dallas's defense is going to be the best defense on the field, but I think Philly's defense is going to be the difference maker. They're gonna force that turnover, or they're gonna force that mistake by Cooper Rush that some of these other teams haven't been able to do, and that's going to be the difference in the game. Is a play made by Philly's defense in my mind. Obviously, it's going to be a rowdy crowd Sunday night. They're going to be ready to go. They're going to be all day, drinking, having fun. Philly's not a fun place to play anyways for most teams, but Dallas on a Sunday night, I imagine it's not going to be, rainbows and roses at all. I think when it's all said and done, I could be wrong, but I think Philly is going to win the game and establish themselves as not only the beast of the East, but the beast of the entire NFC, for that matter, for now. But hey, that's my top 5. Again, we had one difference there. You had the 49ers in, and I don't for now. I'm going to give you my reasoning, and then we can talk about it. So I personally think that when everything is said and done, the 49ers will be better than the Minnesota Vikings, and they'll be in the top 5. I think you have to, if you're basing it off of what we think is going to happen and a mixture of what has already happened, the 49ers have two losses to 2 really bad teams. There's no way around it. I don't care. The weather was bad in week 1 in Chicago. I get it. But both teams were playing in the bad weather, and the 49ers blew a double-digit lead and lost to the Bears. And then they had their chances against Denver, and although Denver has a solid defense, when you hold a team to 11 points, you should win the game. And somehow they found a way to not win it. So I fully believe that on the strength of their defense and Jimmy G getting his legs underneath him, that they will eventually be in my opinion, probably the top 3. But for now, I have them out because I need to see what they've done the last couple of weeks sustained against a couple of these teams that they have coming up, like Kansas City and the Rams again. So that's why I had them out, but they are very close to being in.
I would have a couple of teams ahead of the Vikings. I mean, I like their record. Don't get me wrong. I like their record. Their one loss is against the Eagles, but they have wins against the Bears, the Lions. My gosh, there was like two. Here, let me look this up.
They
real
beat the
quick.
Packers in week 1.
Yeah, so Packers team that's not as good, and then the Saints who aren't great either. Um, their defense gave up 24 points to the Lions, who granted have been scoring a lot of points against everyone this year,
Yeah.
but gave up 22 points against the Bears team who doesn't have that great of an
Yeah.
offense. So, but
I
I
get it.
feel you. I
I
mean,
get it.
their record, it is what it is. They found ways to win. They won games that they should win. So, you got to give them credit for that.
Yeah.
They easily could have fell trapped to any one of those teams. Thought, they could have walked in against the Bears and, said, oh, you know what, this is guaranteed W. And next thing you know, the
Yeah.
Bears could have smacked them in the mouth. So, um,
Yeah.
hey, they're winning games. I just, let's see how they do against a couple more good quality opponents. You could say the same thing about the 49ers. So I hear you on that.
Yeah.
Um, there's
And
nothing.
that's
There's just nothing spectacular that sticks out about the Vikings, their offense or their defense.
no, I got you. And I get it. And like I said, the 49ers eventually will probably be ahead of them. But again, part of my reasoning is if you take that one common opponent into account with the Bears, right?
Yeah,
Although the Bears scored more points on the Vikings still ended up beating them. So, like
that's
you
true.
said, the Vikings won a game they should have won. And
That's right.
that's what played into it for me is the two losses that the 49ers have, they should be 5-0 right now, in my opinion. Their defense played obviously well enough for them to be 5-0. The offense, albeit in the rain, they didn't maintain their lead in the second half, and they lost a game they should have won. And then again in Denver, well, when they were playing Denver, they they had their opportunities to score and they just couldn't capitalize. The defense held
Yeah,
the other team to 11 points, and again they lost the game they should have won. So based off those two things, that's why I kept the 49ers out. Trust me, I love them just as much as you do, so I would love to have them
I
up
hear
there.
you. I mean, they're
But
good arguments.
for me, I want to see it. So again, here's another game like we talked about coming up. Falcons, potential trap
Yeah,
game. I want to see them win this game handily, like they'll win the games that they
just
should.
like they just did.
If
Yeah,
they go to Kansas City and they lose, but it's a close game, hey, all right. But if they go to Kansas City and they get embarrassed, well, that lets me know that they're not quite as good as we thought they were. And part of how good they've looked is because they've been playing some of these mediocre teams. So if I see them do it, and I'm not saying hold Kansas City to 15. If they hold Kansas City to 15 points, I will be elated. But I'm saying keep it close, stay in the game, win the game. Obviously, would be the best thing, but don't go out there and give up 35 points. Then that tells me as good as our defense as we think it is, it's not quite as good as we think it is, in my
yeah.
opinion. So I got to see it for a couple more weeks with them, just like you said with Minnesota. You need to see it against some of these better teams. So that's our top five. Again, thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Please like and share. Leave a comment. Tell us where we were right, where we were wrong, and leave your top five so we can tell you where you were wrong.